Good morning, everyone. And in this video, I'll be explaining about VPC. So VPC is nothing but a virtual private cloud where AWS will create its own virtual private network in the cloud. So coming before going to VPC, you need to understand what is you need to understand certain terminologies. So first terminology that we're going to talk about is IPv4. So IPv4 is nothing but a logical unique address which is given to the network or the device which is connected towards the internet. So it looks something like this: 192.168.1.1. And then second terminology that you need to understand is subnets. So what is subnet? So for example, you have this internet or the network, the entire network, and you want to divide this network into sub-networks. So this is one subnet, and then you divide, and there's a second subnet, and then this is third subnet. So this is subnet is basically subnetwork. So this is what you're doing. You're dividing your network into subnets. And then third terminology that you need to understand is CIDR. So CIDR is nothing but classes inter-domain routing. So it's basically used to assign IP address used to assign IP address towards subnet. It used to assign the host inside the subnet or the devices which are connected to the subnet. So it is very useful in assigning the IP addresses. So AWS will use CIDR to assign IP addresses to the subnetwork, that is subnet, and to the host or the network or the or sorry to the devices which are connected inside this subnetwork. So AWS will use CIDR for that. So it looks something like this. So 168.1.1.26. So this 26 is basically how many network bits are there in the IP address. So this is what is notation stands for. So now let's move on to the main concept of VPC. So I'm going to explain you with an example. So let me draw this one diagram. So this entire thing is VPC, and inside the VPC you have subnets. And this is public subnet, and this one is private subnet. And inside the subnet, you have your EC2 running, EC2 instant running. So and this is the let's say this is the internet, okay? So one of the real life applications that you can use in VPC is that, let's say you have a website, a full stack website where you deploy your front end to the public subnet and your backend at the private subnet. Yeah. So for example, if you want to deploy your database, you can deploy in the private subnet because database is something which is confidential, and you can deploy your front end part or the front end part of the website on public subnetwork or the subnetwork or subnet. Yeah. So this is one of the real life use case examples that I've given you. So coming to exactly what is public subnetwork and what is private subnetwork, what's the difference? So public subnetwork can have access towards the internet, whereas the private subnetwork doesn't has access towards internet. It does not has access towards the internet. This is what private subnet is about. And whereas in public subnet, it can have access to internet. So this is the main difference between public subnet and private subnet. So here's the question: how does public subnet how can public subnet access towards internet? How? the simple answer is you need to have a gateway. So before coming to gateway or routing table, so we're gonna talk about our ability zone. So just one second. So okay. Okay. So inside VPC, you can have as many of public subnetwork and private subnet and as many of private subnet and public subnet as you can inside the VPC, and you can have many different availability zone. For example, this is one availability zone, uh, availability availability zone, and this is another availability zone that and inside availability zone 2, and inside the availability zone you can have your uh, uh, public subnet, and you can have private subnet. So you can have many availability zone, and inside the availability zone you can have as many of private subnet and public subnet as you can. So this is about our ability zone in VPC. So now coming to the main part is that how does let me erase this. Okay, so coming to this, how the public subnet has access towards internet. So you have something called internet gateway. This is internet gateway. So what the internet gateway does, for example, my application is running on this EC2 instance, and it is in the public subnet. So, and I want to access resources from internet. So how am I going to do that? So I'm going to send in request to internet gateway saying that okay, I want a certain resource that needs my application to be running. So what the internet gateway it does it just forwards the request to the internet. The internet will grant me the resource, and then that resource is then forwarded to internet gateway, and then the internet gateway forwards to back to public subnetwork. With my application running in the EC2 can get the resources. This is how internet gateway works. So simple words, let me put forward to this is that it allows the public subnetwork or the public subnet to have access towards the internet by sending the traffic from the public subnetwork or the public subnet or to internet gateway, and then it sends the request or the traffic to internet, and then the internet will send back the request with the provided resources to internet gateway, and then internet gateway then passes back the request to public subnet. And now coming to private subnet network. Okay, so here's a question. Private subnet doesn't have access towards the internet, but let's say your application running on private subnet and still wants the resources from the internet, but it's private. How are you going to do that? So the answer is that you need to have a NAT gateway, network address translation gateway. So NAT gateway is placed in the public subnetwork. So you can consider it a NAT gateway, there's a network data translation. So what happens is that my application which is running on the EC2 instance is in a private subnet and wants to access the internet. So I just send a request to NAT gateway, and then this is main part. The NAT will send the request to internet gateway, and once the request gets to the internet gateway, it just sends the request to the internet, and the internet will then send back the traffic, that is the resources that I want. It sends back to internet gateway, and the internet gateway sends the traffic, sends the request, or sends the traffic back to the NAT gateway, and the NAT gateway will send back the traffic provided with the resources back all the way back to the private subnet to my application, which is running on EC2 instance. So the summary is that NAT gateway is used for, so basically it is used for the private subnet to access the internet. So it is placed on the public subnet network. NAT is placed in the public subnet. So this is the concept of the gateways. Now coming to the next topic is firewalls in VPC. So there's two types of firewall that you need to understand. One is, so first firewall is network access control list. And then second firewall is security group. So network access control list is placed in the public subnet. And basically it is placed, one second, let me make this diagram clear. This is VPC. Okay. So, and this is public okay, so this is public subnet, and this is the entire thing is VPC. Okay. So So network access control list is placed in the public subnet. So what it does is that it allows the traffic coming from internet to the public subnet, or the subnet from the traffic from subnet to internet. NACL allows that. So whereas the security group is basically, it is a firewall which is placed inside the EC2 instance. So inside this EC2 instance. So what's the difference between network access control list and the security group? So the main difference is that network access control list has the right to allow and deny the rules, where the security group is that it just allows the rules. Basically, what is that? So it just allows the traffic coming from internet to the EC2 instance in the public subnet, but it cannot deny the traffic, where the NACL can also allow the traffic and deny the traffic. Basically, it allows the rules and deny the rules, whereas the security group, which is in the EC2 instance, cannot deny the rules. That's the only difference between network access control list and the security group. So security group is basically the return traffic is automatically allowed regardless of any rules, whereas in network access control list is basically the return traffic must be explicitly allowed by the rules. So security group operates at the instance level, and the network access control list operates at the subnet level. So So security group allows suppose only allowed rules and never access control allow rules and deny rules. That's the only difference between an ACL and security group. These are the firewalls which exist in VPC. So there's something called VPC flow logs. So logs are nothing but the information which is stored in your device or like in your device or whatever activity that you're doing on the internet. So it's like history, you can say that. So VPC also have its logs, which is present in VPC. For example, it has a history record. It has a record of your of the coming to VPC, traffic coming to VPC, and goes all the way to the public subnet and the private subnet. So it has the all the records of that. That's it. So nothing much more about the VPC flow logs. So now coming to next topic, that is the VPC peering. So VPC peering is that so this is VPC one, and this is one VPC, and this is another VPC, or let's say VPC two, one VPC one. These two VPC have a connect. So basically, VPC peering is basically connection between two VPC, which is connected privately in the AWS network itself. So it makes and both of the CIDRs should not overlap each other. So the CIDR of VPC one and CIDR of VPC two should not overlap each other. So this is about VPC peering, and now coming to the VPC endpoints. So here you have so this is sorry. Okay. This is VPC. This is private. It's a private subnode, and this is the EC2 extent. And okay, so VPC endpoints basically. So let's say you want to connect your VPC, basically like. So you want to connect your VPC to any of the AWS services. For example, you want to connect your VPC to S3, you want to connect your VPC to DynamoDB or CloudWatch. So what are you going to do is that, so you're gonna place this VPC endpoints here. So what is happening is that your EC2 instance, which is running in the private subnet, will access to any of the AWS services through VPC endpoints. So this is VPC endpoints, and this is and from VPC endpoint you're accessing to S3, you're accessing to DynamoDB, and you're accessing the CloudWatch. So this is what the VPC endpoints are about. So VPC endpoints helps you to connect your instance running on a private subnet inside the VPC to access the other AWS services like S3, DynamoDB, CloudWatch, etc. So this is all about VPC that you need to know about, and so I'll be talking. I'll be now summarize. I'm going to summarize you about VPC exactly. So in VPC you have private network and the subnet network, and in the private network, in the public network, public network can access towards internet, whereas a private subnetwork cannot access towards internet. In order for a subnet to access to the internet, you need to have a gateway. So internet gateway is used in public subnet, and if the private subnet wants to access the internet, it has to access to the NAT gateway, which is placed in the private subnet, and you have the firewalls, that is network access controllers, which is placed in the public subnet, and it can allow and deny the rules. And whereas in security group, this is placed inside the ET2 instance, and it can only allow the rules. That's the difference. And then you have VPC peering. So VPC peering is basically the connection of two VPC, and make sure that the CIDR doesn't overlap with each other. And then you have VPC endpoint. So with the help of endpoints, you can able to access the other AWS services from VPC. You can have a connection with VPC with other AWS services. So thank you very much for watching this video, and once again, for reminding you, please like and subscribe this video. Sorry, I mean like the video and subscribe this channel. Thank you very much.